As a church, we've been in a study of Genesis, and really we're looking at the first 11 chapters of Genesis, and really focusing over these last couple months in Genesis 1 and 2, creation. And what we're going to be looking at today is building off of that. You might be saying, okay, well, it says in the bulletin, not Genesis, but Proverbs, Proverbs 3. And what we're going to see is that the Bible teaches, especially in Proverbs, that part of understanding creation is understanding how wisdom fits in there. And we're going to see this laid out here in Proverbs. We're going to look at several different passages in Proverbs, but I'm going to start in Proverbs 3, 5, and 6 and end with that, but just see how practical of an issue this is. And so let me begin by reading from Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. It says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart and do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make straight your paths." May God bless the reading of his word. Let me open with a word of prayer. Father, I thank you for the privilege that we have to come together today, and Father, to worship you, to celebrate what you're doing, to celebrate our kids and the Vacation Bible School. Father, to celebrate how you're working our lives, to praise you, and now to come into your word, and Father, to see truths that are here for us, not only to know, but Father, to understand and to apply. Truths that make a difference in life, truths that are precious. And Father, I pray your blessing now in our time. I pray that you would work, that your Spirit would speak through your word, and even in spite of me and through me. Father, I pray your blessing in Jesus' name. Amen. Several weeks ago, we had a church-wide event where we had a bunch of people go to an Akron Rubber Ducks game. And Todd Hicksonbaugh did a great job organizing that. We had over 150 people went. I mean, it was a fun day. As part of the promotion of that, a fun thing that he a couple weeks before that, some of you might remember, he came in, and on Sunday morning, there were all these rubber ducks that were put on the chairs, and just kind of as a way of getting us ready for that. And it was very creative. Obviously, it was very effective. We had a bunch of y'all go, but it got my attention in a unique way because it reminded me of something. You see, when one of my sons was a toddler, for several months, the most precious possession that he had was a rubber duck, very much like that, just a little tiny rubber duck. And it went everywhere with him. Ducky, he loved that. It was extremely important. Probably one of the clearest memories of how important it was is that one day we had gone to a movie theater together as a family, and of course Ducky went with him because he went everywhere. But when the movie was over, he had forgotten about Ducky and accidentally left him in the movie theater. And so we're walking toward the car, and suddenly we realize he's forgotten his Ducky, and we are in a major crisis. We've left the theater. We can't go back in. Ducky's left inside, and this is the toy of ultimate importance. And so what do? Well, I went back to the exit door where we're at, and I'm sitting there thinking about it, and suddenly another movie gets out, and people start exiting, and I'm thinking, I can just slip back in the exit door and go back in the theater and get Ducky. And while I'm going in there, I realize, this is illegal. What if I get caught? Am I going to get arrested? And there's a article in the paper with my picture. Local pastor gets arrested for sneaking into a theater. And I thought, well, I can try to explain to him, well, I'm going in to get a little rubber ducky. Would anybody actually believe that? It's kind of like, how important was the ducky? It was so important that I risked getting arrested to go back and get it. That's that important to my son. Now, before any of you think, well, your kids are really weird, and the fact is, anybody that has had parents, you realize that your kids likewise have had little things that seemingly have no value that become of extreme importance. And let me take an illustration I think all of us can relate to. How is it that McDonald's does such an incredible job of promoting themselves to preschoolers? It's not that just they love McDonald's, they love Happy Meals. And with our kids when they were young, the ultimate date was go get a couple Happy Meals, go to the park, that was it. And it's not just Happy Meals, specifically the toys in the Happy Meals. The toys, y'all, we've got our teens up here. Do you remember your favorite toy from the Happy Meal? Yeah, you can remember. What's the best one? What stands out? Huh? You can give me any?
There were those
Lego cars, or, y'all are thinking of it. You think, how many of you still have any of those toys? A couple of you, okay. The thing is that our kids, they knew what toy was being promoted at any given time. And they're twisting our arm to be able to go, we want to go to McDonald's. And then you go there, and some of them got the best toy and others didn't. Next thing you know, we've got a big fight over who's got which toy in a Happy Meal. It was extremely important to them. But you know what? As they have grown up and got married and moved out, none of them were moving Happy Meal toys with them. They kind of forgot about that. Why? Because as they grow in maturity, they suddenly realize what was so precious to them, it's a little worthless piece of plastic. Now, aren't you glad that as adults, we understand what is of real value? That we aren't deceived into thinking little plastic trinkets are items of great worth and importance? Are you glad, or do we understand that? Is it possible that we can be just as deceived about what really matters in our life, what's truly valuable, as our preschoolers are? Can we be deceived and blinded by marketers or by social media? Is it possible the only difference is that we focus on different toys? How do we know if we're deceived or not? I think one of the things we need to realize is that just like with our kids, they're living in the context of their immaturity. They can't understand their own immaturity. They can't understand the impact of media. And in the same way, is it possible that we can be living and we don't see our own immaturity? We don't understand how we're being impacted not only by media, especially by social media. What we need is a source of truth outside of ourselves. Something outside of our culture, something that has stood the test of time to help us to see what really matters. But what does matter? Let me ask you, what is most important, most precious? What is the most important thing or precious thing that you could achieve in life, that you could acquire in a lifetime? If you're a parent or a grandparent, what is the most precious gift, the most precious legacy that you could give to your child or your grandchild? Is it financial wealth? Perhaps, if you had great athletic ability and you gave them that ability, or maybe popularity, is it a life of ease? You know, it's interesting as we think about it, these are some of the things that most people in our culture chase throughout their lifetime. But we all know of people who have achieved many of those things, but yet still have lives that are broken and miserable. What is the most important thing that we can acquire? Well, if we ask that question, I said we need a source outside of ourselves. So let me go to a source outside of ourselves, outside of the culture. I'm specifically thinking of the Bible, and even more specific, the book of Proverbs. It's a book of wisdom that has been given to us, not of wisdom and opinions of man, but of God, through inspiration of God. It's been reliable for 3,000 years. You know, a few moments ago, I read from Proverbs chapter 3, verses 5 and 6. Let me go a few verses later in that same chapter and look at what Proverbs tells us about the greatest treasure we can have in life. It says, "Joyful is the person who finds wisdom, the one who gains understanding. For wisdom is more profitable than silver, and her wages are better than gold." Now, when it talks about more profitable than silver, wages better than gold, I think it's because of this. When we value money, we value it as a means to an end. We value money for what it can buy us. And what he's saying is whatever money can buy us, when we think of what wisdom buys, it's able to purchase something of far greater value. It continues, "Wisdom is more precious than rubies. Nothing you desire can compare with her. She offers you long life in her right hand and riches and honor in her left hand." In that time, rubies were the most precious thing in life. And he's saying, no, this is more precious. Why? Because look what it delivers, long life and riches and honor. True riches, not financial, true life wealth. It continues in the next verse. "She will guide you down delightful paths. All her ways are satisfying. Wisdom is a tree of life to those who embrace her. Happy are those who hold her tightly." And who doesn't want that? You know, anything that we chase in life, we're hoping that it's going to bring us a life that we would describe as delightful and satisfying and happy. But that's the life that wisdom has to offer us. And it's saying it's far more valuable than all the wealth and fame and the power in the world. You know, we can strive to get things or the right job or the right person, the right friends, and the right circumstances in life. And here's what we need to realize: more than all those circumstances is wisdom that allows us to be able to grow and thrive and find contentment regardless of the circumstances. There are many people who have gotten those circumstances, who have fame and who have power and who have wealth, but because they lack wisdom, they're miserable. And there are many others who lack the material blessings, but because they have wisdom, their life is full and their life is blessed. So what is wisdom? Well, the next verse tells us a little bit. It says, by wisdom the Lord founded the earth, by understanding he created the heavens. Now, I'm going to introduce this. We're going to come back to this. It's telling us that wisdom is somehow related to creation. Now, remember that point. I'm going to come back to it in a few minutes. But we're trying to understand it. It's something that's into creation, but what is it? What's a definition in a sense? Because when we talk about wisdom, when the Bible talks about wisdom, we're talking about something that's more than just knowledge. It's not just education. We all know people who are very well educated, who are very smart, and yet who lack wisdom. And they're unwise when it comes to basic issues of life. And a good example of this, I mean, we've all seen people that are maybe professional counselors. They've written books on marriage. They counsel other people of how to have good relationships. And then you look in their life, and they've been divorced multiple times. And they're sitting there saying, okay, you're educated, you know some facts, so much you'll try to educate other people. But then I look at your life and you don't have the wisdom to know if your facts are right or not, or you don't have the wisdom to know how to actually apply that into your own relationships. What is wisdom? Let's look to the Bible. And so we're going to spend some time in Proverbs 3, but also in Proverbs 8. So let me go to Proverbs 8. And here you see in Proverbs 8, wisdom is personified as a woman calling out to us. And look at how wisdom is described. He says, I, wisdom, dwell with prudence and find knowledge and discretion. So what is it? It includes knowledge. It includes the knowledge of what's true, but it's more than just knowledge. It's also combined with prudence and discretion. That's a way of saying that it's knowledge that not only knows what's true, but knows how to apply it to life. A few verses down, verse 14, I have counsel and sound wisdom. I have insight. I have strength. And when it says that wisdom has insight, it means that it's insight about how knowledge works, how life works. It's not just a book of knowledge. It's a knowledge that is applied to practical life. I can go to another verse or chapter or book, in the book of James in the New Testament, and it kind of has this same idea. In James chapter 3, look at what it says about wisdom. Who is wise and understanding amongst you? By his good conduct, let him show his works in the meekness of wisdom. See, wisdom is more than knowledge. It's understanding. There is truth there, but it's then also understanding how to apply that to daily life in such a way that wisdom will always reveal itself in its actions. And so if I were to give a simple definition of wisdom, it's this. Wisdom defines what is true, and it defines how the world works. And so wisdom, we not only understand what's true, but then we know how to live it out in the way that the world works. It always starts with understanding what's true, having a right understanding of what truth is, what actually is. But it's not only the truth about reality, it's then also how to apply that, how to live according to that reality. And then when we talk about wisdom, we've got to realize when it says what's true, truth isn't defined by my opinion or your opinion or by the cultural opinion of the time. It's defined by reality, by what is. The Bible teaches that God has built this reality into the fabric of creation. And not only that, but when he builds into the fabric of creation, he also builds consequences, blessings if we live according to that truth, and negative consequences if we ignore that truth. It's built into creation in the sense that it's timeless, it's unchanging. Now, that's unpopular in our culture today because in our culture, well, no, we see wisdom as something that evolves and moral clarity is something that evolves and we've got to go to new levels of truth, which really leads us to a question of saying, what is the source of wisdom? You see, we've got to understand this because different people will come to very different answers about what wisdom is based on what they believe the source is. Ultimately, when we're talking about source, we're going back to creation, Genesis. Where do we come from? You know, whether you believe that we are the result of creation, we talked about that we have two stories of where we come from. You know, are we the result of creation, as it says in Genesis, that in the beginning God existed outside and he created and he designed us? Or are we the result of evolution and materialism and of chance? See, we've spent, even in May, and especially in the month of May, pretty much the whole month, you know, looking at even the evidence of creation. Some people will say, well, when you talk about creation, well, that's a religious statement, and evolution, well, that's science, and now we're talking about morality. And And what we said is, no, we've got to realize that this is about truth. And so if we are created, that's not a religious statement, that's a statement about what happened, it's a statement about science, it's about statement of truth. And so we looked at the evidence of science. And what we found is that the evidence of science is far more consistent with the story of Genesis, of creation, and is very much in disagreement with evolution. So much so that we saw scientist after scientist basically saying, we believe what we believe not because of the evidence, but in spite of the evidence, because they start with the rejection of God. And so here we see the truth of creation. But if we believe in creation, that's a statement, again, that's not just about science or about religion. It's a statement about foundational truth, about who we are, where do we come from, and what's the purpose of life? How do we understand the world? Are we the result of created design, or are we the result of evolution? And if we're the result of evolution, what that means is it means that we're evolving. You see, when you look at evolution, it's saying that all things aren't designed. They're the product of chance, and not only that, but they're changing. And so if we're evolving biologically, from that it flows that, what is evolution? Well, evolution is there's no ultimate design. Everything is changing to figure out how it works better. So if evolution is true, then there is no absolute truth. There is nothing outside of us that is true. And so even when we talk about morality, well, we're looking and we're changing and we're trying to figure out what works. Well, that's the thinking that drives much of our culture today. There's no truth or wisdom outside of us that is greater than us. We should expect the ideas of wisdom and truth to be something that we're learning and we're discovering, and we should expect it to be different than what it was 100 years ago, because everything's evolving. And again, that's the value system. That's the thinking that's driving the culture, and I think driving the culture into the ground. Why? Because we are not the result of evolution. We are the result of God's creative act, as described in Genesis. And again, not only that the Bible teaches, but that science teaches. And it's not only that God created our world and that God created us as human beings, that we are the product of his design, but it means that everything in the world is the product of design, including things like morality and relationships and family structure and work, all those things. There's a truth outside of us. There is something greater than us, something that is outside of our culture that does not change. It doesn't evolve. And for us to be healthy, happy people, we shouldn't be evolving to something new. We should be going back to our original design. And the more that we align ourselves with our design, the healthier and the happier we're going to be. Now, it's not only that, but we've got to realize if we understand this whole concept of design, we realize that with design, there are consequences that are built into that as well. And again, when we look at this, it's built on the idea that in design, there's what's called absolute truth. There's something that is always true for all of us, no matter what you believe, no matter what your opinion, no matter how times change. In 21st century America, we like to think that when it comes to issues of religion or faith, it's all relative. There's no absolute truth. This is what you believe, this is what I believe, this is my truth, this is your truth. And if you really think about that, it's nonsense. It's foolish. If something is true, it's true for everyone, not because you believe it, but because it's objectively true outside of ourselves. We understand 2 + 2 = 4. That's an objective truth. It doesn't matter whether you believe it equals 4. It doesn't matter what you think about it. It's what is. And the question is, are you going to live by that truth? And God gives us wisdom in the Bible that works because he's the creator, and he's saying, this is the objective truth. This is the way that you were designed. And the question is, how well are you going to align yourself with that design? Now, this crazy thing is I could talk about so many areas of life, and we understand that. Okay, so let's take, for example, I don't think I'm the only man here who, when you get a box and it says some assembly required, what do? We open the box, we dump it out, and we start working on it. And at least for me, there are times that I'm working at it, and it's a couple hours in, I'm like, man, they didn't put the right pieces in. What's wrong with this? And my wife comes by, and she says, have you looked at the directions? And I'm like, are you kidding? Woman, what's wrong with you? I'm a man. I don't need the, it's kind of like, no, I can figure this out. And I'm looking at that, and we can relate, right? And women are saying, amen. It's like, yeah, preach it. The thing is that we can't, sometimes I can figure it out. A lot of times I can't. Why? Because I'm not following the directions. If I follow the directions, it actually tends to work better. And it's not only putting it together, once it's together. So you have something, let's say you get a lawnmower and you got a lawnmower. It's not only in the instruction manual, but right there on the lawnmower, gas tank. Put gas only in the gas tank. Now, what if I think that, okay, I'm going to be postmodern here, and if I am sincere in believing something else is going to work, gas is kind of expensive. Gatorade it's got like energy in it, so let's kind of put Gatorade in the gas tank. What happens? It not only doesn't run, it actually ruins the engine. It does destruction. Why? Because it's designed for something. Now, if I put Gatorade in there, am I sitting there saying, man, I can't believe, this lawnmower company, and it's like they're mean, how judgmental that they judge me for putting Gatorade? No, they're saying, here's the design, and we're not out trying to get you if you don't live according to the design. These are natural consequences. We understand that in life. The same thing is true in creation. Why? Because in creation, God wove physical and moral laws into reality. They describe the way things are designed, the things they work, the way things work. So we understand this again. Let's take the physical laws. These are a little bit more understandable. There are physical laws that are woven into creation that work regardless of what you think about them. So let's say gravity. Okay, that works regardless of what you think. It's built into there. Same thing's true of moral laws. That's what Proverbs, let's go back to Proverbs 8. And look at what it says. I mentioned earlier in Proverbs 3, where it talks about creation. Look, it's more clear in Proverbs 8. It says, the Lord possessed me. This is wisdom speaking. The Lord possessed me at the beginning of his work, the first of his acts of old. Ages ago I was set up, at the first before the beginning of creation. So he's saying this idea of wisdom is actually built into the creation before he made anything else. He continues. When there were no depths, I was brought forth. When there were no springs abounding with water, before the mountains had been shaped, before the hills, I was brought forth. Then I was beside him like a master workman. I was its daily delight, rejoicing before him, always rejoicing in his habited world and delighting in the children of man. And so here he's doing it, and he's saying, what does it mean? Rejoicing before him in this habited world, delighting in the children of man, basically saying, here is truth. And when men live according to this truth, it's a delight. It works. It's teaching us that something is woven into creation. We can talk about his moral law, what's right and wrong. God made it. He didn't just make things up. Well, I'm going to choose that, adultery is wrong, and well, it could be. No, he's saying these are truths that I'm building in. And if we break it, it's not that God is punishing us. It's saying if you put Gatorade in the gas tank, it's going to be broken. And so we understand moral law it is what's right and wrong, but it's more than that. It's about what is right, what is true, how life works. And it's telling us something about the nature of wisdom. It defines what is true and how life works. Again, think of let's go back to the physical laws. These laws are physical reality that are built in the fabric of creation. It's about what's true. And so when you think about a physical law, okay, gravity, when you think about a physical law, often when we think of a law, we think of something that our boss made up, the government made up, whether you obey it or not, we disagree with it or not. But when we talk about a law of nature, it's different. There's a sense that describes the way the world is, and you can't really break them. You can ignore them, but there'll always be consequences, natural consequences. So again, the law of gravity. Let's say that I decide, I have a dream that I have superpowers now. And so with my superpowers, I now am no longer bound by gravity. I'm going to go up to Cleveland. I'm going to go to the top of the terminal tower. I'm going to jump off the terminal tower. And what's going to happen? I'm going to take a terminal fall. That's the end. Splat. It's going to be ugly. Why? Because the fact of the matter is that gravity works in a way that there's natural consequences. It's a law I cannot escape, and there's natural consequences of that wisdom. So that if I look at it and if I ignore gravity, it's not like if I fall and say, God is out to get me. No, he said, here's a law. And again, you put Gatorade in a gas tank, it's going to break. You jump off the terminal tower, you're going to get broken. It's true, and the consequences are true, because that's the way that's the way the world works. And just as it is stupid for me to think that I can jump off the terminal tower and somehow escape the physical laws of gravity, in the same way, it's just as stupid for me to think that I could ignore God's moral law and escape the power of its consequences. They're just the same thing. They're built in the same way. But if, on the other hand, we live according to God's design and align ourselves with that truth, if we live in wisdom, the consequences are a blessing. That's what we read earlier ago, or a long, short time ago in Proverbs 3. What does it say? Joyful is the person who finds wisdom and the one who gains understanding. Wisdom is more profitable than silver. Her wages are better than gold. Wisdom is more precious than rubies. Nothing you can desire can compare with her. She offers you long life in her right hand, riches in her left. She will guide you down delightful paths. All her ways are satisfying. Wisdom is a tree of life to those who embrace her. Happy are those who hold her tightly. What a great promise. And he's saying, okay, God built these into the fabric of creation, and because wisdom is true in the world that works, he says, this is what's the promise. That's what I want. I don't know about you. This is the path that I want. And what's that look like to live it? Well, let me point out something here in this verse 17. See, she will guide you down delightful paths. All the ways are satisfying. Something I want you to see here is that wisdom isn't a truth to know. It isn't even an event. It's a path. It's a lifestyle, in a sense. And the question is, are we on the right path? You know, I talk to people at times who are disappointed with something in their life, and man, life didn't turn out well, and they're surprised by it. And a lot of times we look at it and say, okay, what path have you been on? So, for example, I've done a ton of weddings over the years. I've never had someone come up to me and say, man, my goal is that we're going to have a couple good years of marriage, and after that, divorce court. Man, it's going to be great. No, people don't do that. Everybody says, oh, I want this to last. We want as long. This is the destination we want. Okay, the question isn't where you want to go. What path are you on to building that? Because if you're on the wrong path, you're not going to come to that destination. That's just a simple idea. And where do you want to go? And we're surprised. How did I get here? Well, you were on the wrong path. We understand this again. Let's say somebody gives me tickets to the Guardians game. I get excited. I'm going to go. Man, we're all set to go there. And I get in the car, jump on I-76 eastbound, and I keep driving. I'm never going to get to the Guardians game. But that's where I want to go. Yeah, but I'm on the wrong road. I'm going in the wrong direction. And what we need to realize is what Proverbs is saying is, what road are you on? Are you on the right road? If you ignore God's wisdom and instead you lean on your own understanding or the opinion of the culture, you're on the wrong road. Don't be surprised if you end up in a place where you don't want to go. That's what Proverbs 3, 5, and 6 talks about. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make straight your paths. You want the right path? The right path is trusting in the Lord, recognizing that we need to not lean on our own understanding. We need to seek him. We need to follow the direction that he gives. But again, in our culture, it's like, but it feels right. But this is what I want to do, and everybody agrees with. Well, again, if it feels right, do we teach our kids, do whatever you feel because whatever you feel is going to lead to the right place? No, of course not. And Proverbs is filled with all kinds of warnings, which is basically telling people, don't follow your feelings. Don't follow the world. If you do that, it's going to lead to disaster. In fact, when I think of a good picture of what Proverbs says, I like this one. You know, this guy driving behind a couple porta potties, and it's kind of like, that's where your path is going. And Proverbs is often saying, it's going to be a disaster. It's going to be a mess. Change lanes, change roads. It's not going to be pretty if you live according to the wisdom of the world, according to your own feelings. But what do I need? The path of seeking after God. And it's a path that ultimately is rooted in relationship with God. Again, look at Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him. It starts with trusting in the Lord. It's a relationship where I trust him. Why do I listen to what he says? Because I trust him. See, first of all, we have to trust him as our creator and our designer. We have to realize that when we talk about God weaving moral truth into creation, we need to believe that there is a moral truth. There is something outside of ourselves. And God wove this in and doesn't just make this up, but he says, okay, I'm the creator, I'm the designer. Here's the instruction book. If you do this, it's going to work well. If you live according to my design, you're going to be blessed. Understand, believe it. Believe that, don't lean on your own understanding. trying to figure this out on your own, you're going to come to a lot of wrong ideas. And when we understand that, we're going to realize that God's moral law, even it isn't a set of rules given us to restrict our freedom, but it's actually an instruction manual to maximize our freedom, maximize our happiness, because we're working according to the way that we're designed. But the heart of this relationship is not only where we trust God as our creator and designer, because he not only created us and then said, good luck, but the whole Bible is a story of God's pursuit of us and relationship with us, where he's a good father, good and loving father, where he wants what's best for us. And so the commands where he gives us, it isn't just this arbitrary commands where he says, well, just do this because I'm trying to prove I'm in charge. No, it's a father that even as we look at our little children and say, don't run into the street, don't put your finger in the light socket. We're telling them things. They might want to do it, but you're saying, don't do that because it's going to do harm. Do this and it's going to bless you. And that's what God's word is. The guidelines are given by a loving God for our good. Do we really believe that God loves us? Do we really believe he knows better? I love John 10:10. It says, the thief comes only to steal and to kill and to destroy. I came that you might have life and that you have it abundantly. There is a thief. There is a spiritual enemy that's out there that's lying to us, that's telling us that we know better. And he's saying, no, don't lean on your own understandings. Realize that, no, I've come that you might have life and that you might have it abundantly. I'm the creator and the designer. I'm the loving father that's guiding you, that wants to guide you into relationship. And if we have that relationship, we'll understand that obeying God is a natural expression of that relationship. See, God's given them to us. They're good. Why do I obey God? Why? Because if I trust him, if I realize that he is my designer, he knows better than I do. If I know that he loves me, then I'm going to want to obey him. It means that even when what his word says disagrees with what culture says or what I want to do or what seems right to me, when I'm leaning not on my understanding, I'm going to say when there's a disagreement, I'm going with God. Because I know he knows more than I do. I know he's good. I know that he loves me. It's all about trusting him, relationship with him. And there may be some here that say, man, but I want away. Hey, I want you to realize this relationship isn't something that we earn based on what we do. We're all sinners. We've all fallen short of the glory of God. But the Bible it's about God pursuing us, not based on what we do, but based on Jesus and him coming and dying on the cross for our sins. So that when we've messed up, we come in and we say, God, I ask you to forgive me. And he gives us relationship. So it's not that I'm trying to do the things to earn the relationship, but because of the relationship God gives us by faith in Jesus Christ through grace. Because I know he loves me. Because I know he's good. Because I know he's my designer. What do I want to do? I want to obey him. I want to align my life with his truth. Because I believe him. I trust him. And I know it's good. My friends, I hope and pray that that's your story. And there may be some here that your life hasn't been aligned with that truth. It's not too late to come back to him and say, God, I ask you to forgive me, and I need this relationship. You see, even where we've gone away, God's story is always one of pursuing us in the context of grace, of forgiveness. And he offers you that grace. There may be some, I've been walking with God, I have this relationship, but part of your life is out of line. You're leaning on your own understanding. No, don't do that. And God's telling us, no, I want you to bring you to a path of blessing where the path is delightful, it's blessed, it's happy. But it's not just a matter of where you're going, but are you on the right path? A path of trusting in the Lord, following after him in all the areas of life.
If you have a question about the message, Community Church, or Jesus Christ, send us a text to 330-400-3242. You can learn more about our events and community groups at ccpl.life/connect. There you can also send in a prayer request. We would love to pray for you. Have a blessed Lord's Day, and we'll see you on Sunday.